Hello and welcome to Lesson 1-6. Today we're going to look at subtracting integers. If we look at a number line, subtracting integers is very similar to adding integers. So if we look at this quick little example, we're going to start out at -6 because it says I have a -6 minus a -2. So if I go to my number line and plot the point -6, and I'm going to be taking away from that a -2. Now typically when we subtract, we move to the left. However, because we are subtracting a negative, as you can see right in here, subtracting a negative is really telling me that I have to subtract, which means I am going to the left, but then because it's a negative, I'm going to subtract the opposite direction, which ultimately tells me that I'm going to be going in the positive direction. So what this would look like on my number line is if I'm subtracting, in this case, a -2, that's really going 2 units to the right, which is going to plot me down at the number 4 location. So this here will equal a -4. Now another way that I like to think about this is I like to think about this as anytime you have a double negative. So if I'm subtracting a negative number, you can actually change a double negative into a positive for subtraction only. Okay, so I could have rewritten this as -6 plus 2. And from our 1-5 video where we were adding integers, we could say that I'm adding 2 different signs here. And if I look at the numerical values, the 6 is going to be bigger than the 2. So that tells me that my final answer is going to be negative. And then I'm just going to subtract the 2 numerical values, and I end up with 4. And now I end up with a -4, just like we found up here with this example. We'll do more practice here in a second. Some people prefer to do addition over subtraction. So if you are one of those people, we can actually change subtracting into adding by doing what we call adding the opposite. Okay, so if you have a case like this where it says 2 minus 5, what we can do is we can actually change that, and I'm just going to write this in the top here. So if I have 2 minus 5, ultimately what I can do is I can come in here, change my subtraction to an addition, and then we can add the negative number to the 5 so that we end up with 2 plus a -5, because subtracting is the same as adding the opposite. So now with this example here, you can see that 2 plus a -5, just like what we were doing yesterday, the numerical value of 5 is bigger, which has the negative sign. And then I end up doing 5 minus 2, which is 3. So I see that this is going to give me an answer of -3. Likewise, kind of like what we just did in that previous mini example, I can see if I have a double negative, as in the case down here, if I come in here and I change my subtraction into an addition, I'm really going to be doing 2 plus 5, or in this case, I get an answer of 7. So if you change your subtraction sign from a subtraction to an addition, you're really changing the sign of the next number. So let's go ahead and take a look at a few more examples. So example 1 says, in January 1916, the temperature in Browning, Montana dropped 100 degrees overnight. The initial temperature was 44 degrees Fahrenheit. What is the final temperature? So if we think about this, we're starting out at 44 degrees Fahrenheit. So we have 44 degrees. We dropped 100 degrees. Well, the word dropped indicates that we are subtracting 100 degrees. So I end up with 44 minus 100. Now you can go ahead and treat this like a simple subtraction and go ahead and do it. Or if you want to practice changing the sign, If I change my subtraction to an addition, I must change the sign of the number that follows that subtraction symbol. So ultimately, I end up with 44 degrees plus a negative 100. And when I do that, the number 100 is greater than 44, and the sign on 100 is negative. So then I end up with 100 minus 44, which is actually going to give me 56. So I end up with a negative 56 degrees Fahrenheit is my actual overall final temperature. Example 2 says to write a numerical expression for each phrase. Then we're going to simplify the answer and answer the question. So for this one, it says you are $2 in debt and you borrow $4 more. What is the total amount of your debt? So usually a debt means that you have a negative amount or that you owe somebody something. So that means that I'm going to start out with a negative $2. And if we borrow $4 more, we're really going to be taking away $4 more here. So I want to know, what is the total amount of money that we owe, or what is my total debt? So if you are a person that likes to change the sign of the subtraction, you have to leave the first one negative, okay, because there is no subtraction in front of it. That is a negative symbol. So we have a negative $2. Then I'm going to change this to addition here. And when I do that, I have to put the negative onto that 4. So I end up with plus a negative $4. Well, when I do it like this, I can see that both of my numbers here are negative, and I'm adding two numbers with the same sign, or two numbers that are negative. So my final answer then is going to be a negative $6, which means you are $6 in debt now. For example 3, it says an airplane takes off, climbs 3,000 feet, then descends, which means drops, 600 feet. What is the airplane's current height? Okay, so our airplane is climbing 3,000 feet. So that's going to be a positive 3,000. Then it descends or drops, which is a subtraction. So it drops 600 feet. So you can either go ahead and do the subtraction, or you can go ahead and change our subtraction to an addition and change the sign on that 600, which now gives you 3,000 plus a negative 600. And when you do this, the 3,000 is numerically larger than 600, and that's a positive, so I know that my answer will be a positive. And I end up with 3,000 minus 600 then is going to give me 2,400 feet. This is our current height. Example 4 says from 0 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature increases 15 degrees, then drops 25 degrees. What is the current temperature? So we're going to start out at 0 degrees, then we're going to increase 15 degrees, and drop means that we're subtracting 25 degrees. So order of operations says I'm going to do my addition and subtraction as I approach it from left to right. So in this case, I have 0 plus 15. So this is going to give me 15 degrees minus 25 degrees. And if you want to change your sign, my subtraction, I'm going to turn that into a positive and make my 25 degrees negative. So now I end up with 15 plus a negative 25. Well, 25 numerically is bigger than 15, and that 25 is negative. So then I end up with 25 minus 15, which is really 10. So we are at a current temperature of a negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So now we've done enough of these. Please pause the video and try these on your own. For example 5, it says to simplify. And for part A, if I come in here and I change my sign, so I have minus and negative becomes a positive. So I have 120 plus 50. This will give me 170. 6 minus a negative 2 minus a negative becomes 6 plus 2, which is 8. And for part C, we have negative 65. I'm going to change this to plus a negative 15. Here I can see I have a negative plus another negative, so my overall answer will be negative. And 65 plus 15 is going to give me a negative 80. And our very last example says, the graph to the left shows how temperature changes with altitude. Use the graph for the following. For 53, it says as the altitude increases, what happens to the temperature? So notice our altitude is right here. On the left, our temperature in degrees Celsius is on the right. And notice on this scale here, you can see that our negative numbers are on the top part for temperature, and our positive numbers are on the bottom part. I also notice that my altitude scale increases as I go from the bottom up. Okay, so 51 says, what happens as the altitude increases? So as our altitude is increasing, or in other words, we're going up the scale like this, notice that our temperature is actually getting smaller. So as we go up the temperature scale, my numbers are going from a positive 28 to a positive 20 to a positive 12 to a positive 4 down to a negative 4 and so on. So for 51, we're going to say that our temperature decreases. Then for 52, it says, what is the change in temperature from 1,500 meters to 6,000 meters? Well, 1,500 meters is right here, and let's change our color. So 1,500 meters is right here, and we can say that that's 20 degrees Celsius. And when we get up to 6,000 meters, 6,000 meters is right here, and 6,000 meters is at a negative 4. So it says, what is the change in temperature? So we want to look at subtracting. So for 52, when I start out at 1,500 meters, we said that we are at 20 degrees Celsius. And when we go to 6,000 meters, we are now at a negative 4. So a change means subtraction, and we're going to be subtracting a negative 4 degrees Celsius. So I see that I am subtracting a negative number, so I'll change those to addition. And I see that that gives me a 24 degree change. And finally, for part 53, it says find the change in temperature for every 1,500 meter increase in altitude. So it doesn't specify which two to look at, so you can go ahead and pick any two increments that you choose. So let's go from 3,000, which is right here, to 4,500, which is right here. So for 53, if I start out at 3,000, I'm at 12 degrees Celsius. And again, I'm looking for change, which means subtraction. So I have 12 degrees Celsius minus, at 4,500, we are at 4 degrees Celsius. And here I have 12 minus 4, or you could write this as 12 plus a negative 4. And when you do that, you really get 8 degrees Celsius. So you get an 8 degrees Celsius change, which is going to be answer B. Now this concludes the 1.6 video. Please let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great day.